Hey everyone, welcome back. We're doing another page. Once again, it's late in the day. Kids have taken up a bunch of my time. So we're just gonna go right into it, get to the second page, which is extra models. So this is essentially carrying on from the previous page. I feel like the titles for these are not as descriptive as to what they are, because I feel like the previous one was about type coercion in a way, right? And how to do that effectively in Fast API. So here's just an example with multiple user types. So for example, we have user in, user out, and user in DB, where the differences between user, they all have some of the same fields, except user in has a password field and user in DB has a hashed password field, right? And in this particular situation, the response model is of type user out, and so it coerces the type user in coming in. And here they're showing some neat little notation in terms of how we create a user in DB, where we just take user in dot dict, right? So that will convert the user in pydantic model, which is a instance of the class user in, and convert it to a dictionary, which is then unpacked with the double star operator, right? You might have seen star star quargs. That's star star keyword arguments essentially. And then you pass hashed password separately as this, which is essentially the hash of the password or fake hash. Either way, it works, and that's most of what's on this page, just talking about the unpacking in user and dict. It also talks about just generically reducing duplication, which is an important thing to do. Like, try to have as little duplicated code as possible and split it up into a separate function if you have similar logic coming up again and again or things like that. Um, because it's more readable and generally less error prone. So that's an important thing to do. Um, so this is just showcasing another example with even less code duplicated, because these three are existing in all three of these. So you could set this as the base, a model from which you inherit all the other three. Now, technically, you don't need to inherit user out because it's essentially the exact same model. So you could just use user base in place of user out, but just for completion's sake, inheriting it, is nice. Another thing you can do is you can set the response model to be multiple different types. So here we're returning uh, either a plain item or a car item. And here you're noticing that they're using union, which is imported explicitly from the typing module, which is different from the notation with the pipe operator that you can use from 3.10 plus onwards. And the reason they do it this way here is because this is not being used as part of a type annotation. It's being passed as a argument in a sense. And so if you were to just use the type annotation, it would just Python would spit out a syntax error essentially. You can create lists of models. That's totally fine. Responding with an arbitrary dict, that's also fine. And that's basically the end of this page. Oops. Next up is response status codes and a couple other stuff. And I know I keep saying it, but I hope I'm able to actually get through a decent chunk of it. I will definitely at least go through status codes, because status codes are actually really valuable. Even though this is a really, really short one. Well, I mean, I'll just go through it anyways. So status codes in APIs, generally when you get a response, you get a status code along with that response. So a very common one is just 200, that okay, everything is Gucci. Um, 204 is no content. 201 is no response required, so it doesn't have a body. Things like that. That's all this is. And essentially, you can say the status code that this should return with um, by giving it the actual status code, or you could also pass it a int enum type, such as Python's http.http status type. So you can just give it one of these. http status.ok, dot value, dot phrase, dot description. Point is you can pass in one of these. I don't know how you hand these ones in. I know http status okay. But point is it's an int enum. And there's also status by fast API, which they can showcase here. So you can do status http 201 created. And if I'm correct, this is same way you can also declare the HTTP status code used for the response of the parameter status code. Boom, done. No issues. Return status code in the response documented. Once you set this up, it also shows up in the documentation. Here's a general breakdown. 100 to 199 are informational and they're not used directly. And responses with these status codes cannot have a body. 200 to 299 are successful responses. 200 is your default okay. 201 is created. 204 is no content. The response is used when there is no content to return to the client, and so the response must not have a body. 300 to 399 are for redirection. Responses with these status codes may or may not have a body, except for 304 not modified, which must not have one. 400 to 499 are client error responses. These are the secondary type. The most common one is 404 not found. Or for other generic client errors, you can use 400. Basically, 400 to 499 is essentially like someone gave you something wrong happened, they gave you something wrong, and you responded saying that, hey, you're not authorized, or we didn't even find this ID you gave us, or whatever. 500 to 599 are server errors. They'll essentially automatically get generated if your server crashes or something like that. Or at least they should be based on the framework you're using. If you coded it all up from scratch and made your own custom framework, well, God help you, you crazy person. Shortcut to remember the names. 2.1 is this, but you don't have to memorize which one. Oh yeah, because fastapi.status. So you can just, that's another int enum type that you could use instead of the http status.status thing as well. And boom. That's essentially it. So apparently there's a way to have a different status code if needed. But we will get to that in the advanced user guide, which we still have some ways to go. We still have a decent amount of the regular user guide to get through before we get to the next one. So for today, we're just going to call it. Hope you guys have a great one. Bye-bye.